So today we're joined by Jennifer. Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Jennifer Gligoric. I am a consultant, a coach. I'm a podcast host of superclinicproject.com. In fact, you can go to superclinicproject.com and go to see me. And I also am the Minister of Equity and Resources for the Digital Nation of Asgardia. So I'm one of the 12 members of cabinet for the world's first digital nation. That's what I do on my quote unquote off time.
Okay,
That's me.
that sounds interesting. I'm not quite sure what that is, so maybe you might wanna explain a bit more about that.
Yeah. Oh, so a couple of years ago, I say about 7 years ago, I saw something on TV and they were making fun of these people who they wanted to have a digital nation. What they wanted to do is explore having humanity, having a baby in space, what space society was going to look like, and also resources, right? And what they were trying to avoid is having a militarized space or worse, corporatized space, because the founder, Dr. Igor Asher Bailey, he's won basically the Nobel Prize, but on like the Eastern Russian end. He's the developer of the Star Wars space technology. So he's a billionaire, but he's a scientist. And he developed a lot of these massive technologies to protect Earth, from asteroids and things like that. And of course, military sees them and corporations. And he was like, well, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking that, that we would protect us and we could, because, his idea was a lot more peaceful, being a scientist and a researcher. And he said, we're really going to have to do something about this because we don't want to have like the Coca-Cola wars where, hundreds of thousands of people die because they found this spice like Dune on some other planet, right? But we have to develop that. There has to be an entity that can really push for that because we're becoming more global and borders kind of are silly now with our technology and everything. We are not, the way we govern the world really isn't how we live at all, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to start that. And so I thought that's fascinating, right? So I'm looking at it, that's fascinating. And of course, the people, it's like a late night talk show. They were making fun of them and they were like, yeah, they're just going to LARP around with their Star Wars and stuff like that. And I thought, well, that's mean, right? Like, what if they can figure it out? This guy has a lot of backing. He's a billionaire and he's has all these, his whole life is spent doing this. Like, why are we not trying to give people a chance to dream the biggest dream, which is true peace on Earth and peace in space and having that, And it really kind of irked me. So I started following him and then they said, oh, you can be a member of parliament, right? And I thought, oh, this might be fun. It was kind of around COVID. I've worked in my house for over 15 years, scaling businesses and working with businesses. And I work a lot with doctors and different things like that. And things were changing. And I thought, well, this will get me, quote, like out of the house without getting out of the house, right? So let me go ahead and apply. And I did. I did an entire video and I didn't, I really still even didn't know much about it, even though I was following it. I was on the website and all of that. And I was elected by over 1 million people. They loved it to be a
Wow.
member of parliament. And then when I got into parliament, they have a parliamentarian, which you might be familiar with, who is still our head of parliament, which is Lembit Opik. And he was a member of British Parliament. He was been on British Big Brother. I think he dated like a Spice Girl. He's really very popular. And
Never
both
heard of him.
Yeah. He's really tall, blue eyes, white hair now, very, very attractive, very stately. He's been in parliament for a long time there in British Parliament. And met him and met other people and met Nobel Prize winners. And then there's me, an entrepreneur. And I'm like, oh, I got a lot to learn. And I thought it was going to be something different, just people coming together. But there was really a lot of legislation and law and things I had to learn about that process. It really taught me that there is a neutral that I wasn't in. I'm very biased, American capitalism, we're great, like those sorts of things we're kind of grow up with that. Of course, as you become an adult, you realize, well, not all of that is true.
Yeah.
There is definitely, I've lived in other countries now, and there's definitely other viewpoints of the world, and not all of them are right. You're not completely 100% right. You're not wrong. It's just understanding that there's other ways to live, other ways to think, being open to it, but then also being okay with but I have the courage of my convictions. This is who I am. This is who I believe, but I can understand other people believe it. But it's okay for me to believe what I believe, which
Yeah,
I think is hard for people to,
it
because
is.
they're either want to be so mamby-pamby, they have no courage of their convictions, which I don't, that's not a me, or they're so staunch they can't even open up their eyeballs or their ears to anything else, right? So, and it's been challenging. I've had to challenge myself on how I think of things. You know, there are people who live in communist countries that are Asgardians. There are people who live in socialist countries that are Asgardians. The way they think things could go are different. And I realized I'm going to have to really listen to this, because how are we going to be a global, how are we going to get better if we don't change, right? Because what we have right now isn't really working even for us anymore, right? So we have to change, but how do we do it in a way that values the earth, humans, allows us still to dream and grow? And then 2 years ago, is it 2 years already? Gosh, yeah, almost 3 years now. I had been working really hard at it, and I was picked to go forward to see if I could be the Minister of Equity and Resources, and I won that position. And so I've been in that position working with the other 12 members of cabinet, which are all just luminary people. So it is very humbling when, you know, I'm there with the Minister of Science and Research, and he's Dr. Floris Weitz. He's the head of the European Space Research Facility there in Antwerp. He's a professor. He just won a massive European award for his research in space, and you know, the other people that I work with. And it's really, I think it's helped level up my game on another side. And that's not even my full-time job. That is just something, you know, we're doing on the background. And people listen to it and they go, that just sounds crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but it's good because people are allowed to dream.
Hmm.
There is this thing out there that if you want to do anything outside the norm, if you want to help people, or you think you want something, the first thing is, no, you can't. And then when I probe it, it comes down to, well, the world's too corrupt. They, and I don't even know who they are, but basically there is this belief that there is this such almost demonic corruption that if you really want to do good, they will not allow you to do it. And I think that's terrifying, because we have to push against that as humanity, and people and children. And I don't care, well, I don't care what age you are. I'm in my 50s. We have to keep on pushing forward, because we can dream the big dream we want, you know? Like, that is the Texan in me. You can't tell me no, right? I still want to do it. Like, let's try. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm trying to help, right? So
Yeah.
if I fail, I fail. But, you know, you can't
Yeah,
tell
you
people
do.
don't even
You have to
try.
dream before you can make something happen. But that must be
Right.
really interesting, meeting all those different people with very different perspectives and making sure that you are able to communicate, like both with how you speak and how you listen, in order that you understand each other well. Because I think that's really difficult, even when you are on the same page. But if you've got really vast difference in how your experience of life, then it's going to take more work, I would guess.
Oh, it does, because I am very much, well, you know, the stereotype, you know, I'm a Texan, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm about, let's make some money, you know, like that is very much my personality. And I'm talking to people who are like, I've been a teacher in this socialist thing, and I just want people to be happy, you know, and I have to realize that people have a very different view. And also, too, diplomacy and how you interact, like, you know, things that I think that are completely would in America would be a good etiquette, you know, or good business etiquette, does not translate in some other cultures.
Yeah.
And it's been very hard in the cultures that do not have women in any roles of power that I interact with. That is, and I've done this before in business. You know, I scaled a company from 3 people to 221 people in 21 countries in like 18 months. One of our offices was in Kuala Lumpur, and that was very different. You know, you have to let women go home at a certain hour of day. There's all these things that they are not allowed to do or allowed to do. That was just, you know, cultural things that you have to, that people grow up with. And some of them really punch hard against you know, me as a woman
Yeah.
going, no, in my head. that's not how this should happen, right? Like, and but then having to go, okay, wait a minute, but if this person's never been exposed to it, they have to be gently, I still am going to have my frame of reference,
Yeah.
of what I think is right and correct and good. They have theirs, but
Hmm.
even then there has to be some middle way, or you'll just
Yeah.
butt heads. You can't just say you're wrong, that's it. I have the moral imperative,
Yeah, you do have to
that's.
respect other people's frame of reference and their cultural beliefs as well.
Yeah, but they have to respect yours. It's a
Yeah.
two-way
And
street.
I suspect it might be more difficult for someone who hasn't been, I don't know if they've been exposed. I'm making an assumption, I think. But I would imagine that they haven't had as much exposure to different cultures than we have, because I don't know though. Is that
No, you're right.
right?
You're right.
Yeah.
They're not used to it.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not just as Asgardia. I mean, I found that in business in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with a lot of physicians that's heavily male in certain things, and then more female depending on which specialty that you go to. And so it's very interesting. We're in a different world, but yet we're still trying to, or want, or there is still a yearning for the way things used to be, right? But we can't ever go back, right? I mean, once you realize the value of all humanity and realize the innate worthiness of all people, you can't ever go back to a place where their value is not respected or thought of as worthy,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't mean that you have to tolerate what you feel is intolerable,
Yeah.
right? There are some cultural things that don't coexist. They just don't. And
Hmm.
they won't without violence. And so if you want to keep that violence away, you have to keep your boundaries up, right?
Yeah.
And we have that in personal relationships. We have that in business relationships. And I see that we have that in the world stage. And we're seeing lots of problems with that. It's
Yeah.
okay to say, well, I'm different and I want to be with people who are like-minded, who have my same values, my same culture, my same thought. That's fine. Go do that. But when you force it onto people who are like, I don't really want that. That's not my values and
Yeah.
culture. Then it becomes a big, big problem, especially
Hmm.
if it's the actual people involved who don't want it. It's other
Yeah.
people trying to do it for economic gain. Then we see a big problem.
Yeah. So have you managed to overcome those differences successfully then? Or do you still have challenges that are like ongoing, or does it get easier when you get to know people?
No, I think I mean for me, I'm very open about it. So my personality is such, and in what I want, as far as, I'm very clear on, in this conversation, this is the goal of the conversation, and this is where we're headed for that. And so when you have clear boundaries and clear desires of where you're headed in your life or for business, or even with Asgardia, it tends to repel the people who automatically know they're not going to get what they want.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say, I think about women in abusive relationships. If the more you have your boundaries, the more like that's not going to fly here. And you keep your boundaries and you immediately distance yourself when you're like, that's not a situation I even care to be in. Bye. Then
Hmm.
it tends to repel people because there's no way they can get what they want. And
Yeah.
it doesn't even have to be manipulative or abusive. It's just
No,
like,
just
why
direct
would I
and
spend my
clear.
time with that if that's not someone I want to spend my time with, right? You do it in sales all the time. Like, this is it. This is what we can do. This is the end game. And then people who are shopping goes, that's really what I want too. Great. That's a great relationship. You know what? That's not really what I want. I want something else. And they go to the store down the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds great. So one of the things I found out about you when I was when we were going to meet was that you were homeless. You lived in a homeless shelter. So I'm really interested in how you got from there to where you are now, because that is an experience that I've had as well when I was a teenager. I wasn't living on the streets, which is what people think of when they think of homelessness, but I was living in temporary accommodation for families. As a teenager, I was actually pregnant and I had a nearly 1 year old. So my relationship broke down. That ended up not having anywhere to live. So yeah, would you like to share a little bit about your experience?
Yes, that must have been very terrible.
So just to give you some, actually, I haven't like clarified it. Like now, like 48. So it was a good 30 years ago, my God. 30 years ago. And now I run my own business. We've got like 80 staff, so quite a successful business. And yeah, so going from that to here, it's been quite a journey, but yeah, I'm interested in your experience as well.
No, that's a good journey. That's very inspiring, actually. Yeah, my journey was very similar. I was pregnant at the time. I was very young. I didn't want anyone in my family to know. And the family, if you would look at my family, you'd think now, oh, you had a silver spoon in your mouth. You have this huge family. Everybody loves each other. And I'm like, yeah, now. But addiction and other things kind of happened. And my family is very successful. They were successful even when that's happening. But it just broke down to the point that I had no one.
Yeah.
And I was just a kid, and there was like no one to go to. They were all experiencing major problems. And so I ended up being homeless on the street. Then I found Covenant House, which is a shelter for kids that are 21 or under. Only kids go there. And you could stay there a couple weeks and then you get kicked out. And then you go, it's kind of like to try to push, into something. I just it was very interesting because I ended up going to college with the help of the system. It was kind of a weird way how I got into college and how I got out, but I was always a straight A student. That was never my problem. Testing was never my problem. Getting a job was not my problem because my mother, who's this incredible businesswoman, she was going through some very tough personal times and just physically, mentally, and spiritually could not be there for me. She was in total crisis.
Yeah.
And but she owned a employment agency. So I ended up working with her when I was a child, and I had a job. Like, she put me to work. She was a different generation. Like, as soon as you can do something, you're going to be doing something. And so I had listened to so many interviews by that point, just either playing in the office or actually being there. At one point, I was the one who had set up secretaries when they would take their typing tests, the spelling test, and I would do that. I would help them with their applications. I mean, I knew the idea of how to get a job, right? So I already had a leg up on most homeless kids that are my age. I knew how to do that, and I hid the pregnancy. And so I ended up getting a pretty decent job. I ended up getting into college. I went to University of Miami, but there were some times where I didn't have a place, and so I would just sleep on campus. And if somebody saw me coming out of bushes or whatever, I'd just be like, "Man, that party was crazy." And I didn't, so they wouldn't know, right? And I learned a lot. I learned a big superpower, which was to blend. I didn't want people to notice me, and they did not notice me. It is a power. Like, I can blend into any situation because of that. And when you're young and you're a female, if you don't blend, predators come out of the woodwork. There was something about me, though, that I think kept predators away. The fact that I did for many years before my family got sick there for a while. I had a great family. I had a sense of self-worth. The way I spoke, I think they thought that she's got people. She's got people. Maybe you will go to this other one. And I've said this before, but Tina Fey had a great book. Though she's a comedian and she was on Saturday Night Live and she does movies, but she said it's not the beauty that draws the predator's eye, it's the damage. And I think that that's very true because I was less damaged than others. And I think that's why there was some buffer around me. And I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of prayers. I have a very big family. I didn't talk to people. They didn't know where I was for a long time. My daughter was adopted, which I found her like 4 years ago. So she was in her 30s when she finally decided to reach out to me. And I have other children now. And so that's been wonderful. She's almost finished with her PhD now. She got into a great family. And I met a lawyer at that time who ended up getting into big trouble for other things. So I really worried most of my life that she ended up being sold or something like in a Jeffrey Epstein thing, because it was South Florida. And I'd spent a lot of money and time to find her. And so when I found out, no, that was not the case, you ended up going to exactly where you were supposed to and had a great life. Yeah, there were a lot of tears and a breakdown on my end involved with that. And at first, when she reached out to me, I didn't believe it was her, because someone else in my past had contacted me and they were lying. They had found me on a registry and they were just trying to get money. And it was so heartbreaking when I realized that this was all a scam. I took myself off the registries finally after decades. And so that's ended up very good. But I would say what got me out of that, out of what could have been, just, I guess, drugs, prostitution, and all the bad things that happened to homeless girls, or trafficking, was the fact that I had a personality and then I worked. I mean, I immediately got jobs. I worked. I really worked really, really hard, and I made myself unnoticeable. And later on, as I became a consultant in businesses, that skill of just blending in the background really helped me find out where the rot was in businesses. So if I walked into a clinic or a company and everybody's on fire and I'd put them out immediately, they hate me. You're the consultant who's going to try to fire us all, right? That's what they would think. And I would just start working. I've learned how to do so many different jobs. I would sit next to people and I go, how can we make this job at the front desk better? How can I make this accounting job better? Is there a software? Is there a spreadsheet? Is there something that can make it better? Do you need more help? I was always in it from that. What is the goal of
Problem
this
solving.
job for the company? Okay, let's see if we can make it better. So needless to say, once people realized that was my goal, their defenses went down, and then I found out what the problem was. And I'm going to tell you, more than 95, maybe 99% of the time, it was never what they were selling. It was never a widget. It was never the scapegoat, because every place has a scapegoat. It was always an HR problem. They were either paying people the wrong wages, putting them in the wrong positions, had the wrong people managing them incorrectly, or they had hired family and had major family dynamics that were ruining it, and they couldn't get over. That is at the end what was the problem for every single one. But every time I had to go through the gauntlet of every single job before what I knew was really happening, I could bring it to say, because they would always say, no, it's because she's not doing the spreadsheet. It's because he's not closing this or this or this. And I'd say, no, it's because of this, because I had already done that. And it wasn't that, right? And so, And it's also, too, they don't track the right things. First for growth.
So it sounds like you've really developed the real skill for problem solving, which is definitely what you need in business. And I think you get that from adversity as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think this sounds bad, but I think a lot of people who've never suffered, if you've never been hungry and thought, how am I going to eat at the most visceral level because there literally was no food, then I think that you missed out. I bet that sounds weird, right? No, we're not supposed to suffer. We're supposed to be like this. But I do feel like in that suffering and in not knowing where I'm going to eat, not knowing if I was going to stay alive, it develops self-worth. The fact of scrappiness, I can do it. I'll get out of it. But also, you're right, problem solving. That's exactly what it was. You had to solve a problem and be, I don't know, more liquid. But not everybody can do that. There are people that are burdened by physical or mental disabilities, emotional disorders. I was very lucky. I didn't have to battle, where am I going to get my meds today or I'm going to die, right? Because I have diabetes or a cancer. I didn't have those things at that time. So like me now, I'm on meds and I don't know. I don't know if I could be as scrappy as you can be when you're young.
That's the thing. You do have health usually when you're young. Most people are healthy when they're young, and it's only when you get older that things start falling apart. But you have that wisdom, don't you? I think that's something that society doesn't value as much as they should, that aging and that wisdom. And society's used to value those traits, but we don't now.
We don't value wisdom the way we used to. There is such a premium on beauty and youth. And there's always been a premium on beauty and youth, but it was always a commodity that was traded. If you look at royalty, and, when you look at peasants, I was just watching something about peasants, when did the women get married as peasants? Well, it's usually 17 to almost 21, because it took peasant families longer to have a dowry or to be able to adapt. And plus everybody had a job, but they also didn't have as bad of, the deaths, they were hardier because they could get married at a decent age. But then you look at, royalty, 13 years old. Oh, she died. He got another one. And all these young girls were just being, this commodity that was just traded. And It was just it's crazy. It's crazy how the world has been, but it's still like that in so many ways. It's just put a nice sheen of legitimacy on it, but it's still
Mhm.
just as bad as it always was. True human trafficking's at an all-time high,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
So yeah, you've been through some real hardship there.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. Somebody was asking me why when I still give, and like anytime there's a tragedy, the first thing I do is I go and I get tampons and pads and things like that. And they're like, "Why are you getting that?" And I'm like, "Believe it or not, they never think to get that."
Yeah, of course.
And so I can tell you when you're homeless, the last thing you want to do, I've learned how to sleep standing up because when you don't when you're out in the street, even if you have a little tent and stuff like that, if you're on your period and you don't have pads and all that, and you have to get those brown, just rags from like a 7-Eleven, the paper towels, you'll wake up with a crotch full of bugs. I mean, that just get, or rats or things. You have to just like figure out how to live for a week like that. And it happens all the time. So people don't think about like just basic things like that, to get that. So I always go out and first thing I do is go donate a whole bunch of that. And they're like, this is nice. Like, how bad do you think it's going to be? And I'm like, and they're the first things that always go.
Yeah. I've never thought, well, I have thought about it, but not to that extent, like not having them
Yeah.
and having that happen to you. Oh my God. I'm
Yeah,
quite,
because you've got to go to, but basically what you do is you get those paper towels that's the only thing you can do is go into like public restrooms, try to steal basically as many of those paper towels out of those, steel things
dispensers.
that you can get. And that's all you can use. And they're terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Yeah, that's just awful. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I
You're
know,
like,
but
oh,
it
this
is
really took a turn,
important.
but it's a reality that people don't
Uh-huh.
think about, and they don't realize that right now there's people having to do that. There's young girls and women that are doing this because they're expensive now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a little pack, and they want to charge you $10 for that, and it's like
Yeah, yeah.
that's a lot,
I
Yeah.
think that's still charged as a taxed as a luxury item in the
Yes.
UK. I'm like, it's not a luxury.
No,
I
that's
can
not
assure
a.
you.
You know what? We need to stop using them and just walk around, and then they'd be like they'd give them out, right? Because they don't have to. But who wants to deal with that? Nobody.
No, well, it's bad enough having to deal with it when you've got,
When you've got all
when
this
you've got
stuff,
enough
yeah,
money and you can afford to buy stuff that you need. But
yeah,
if you can't, yeah, I suppose when and you've said this as well, I was really lucky, but I was really lucky as well because I had support from society to be able to get through that hard time that I had. And I think, well, I mean, I'm sure that some people would be judging me for that, for relying on that. But it was there and I used it and I'm grateful that it was there. But it's made me try harder than everybody else because I know what it's like to not have what I need. So, and to think, oh God, what's going to happen? Like, I don't know where I'm going to live and I don't know what's going to happen next. And so it makes you work harder to be able to get to, I mean, even the point where everybody else is, I had to like climb out of that pit to be the same as everybody else. But I don't think I've ever stopped. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
got level with everybody else and then I decided I was going to set up a business, which like most people, well, it's certainly in the UK, don't do that. They don't, they don't set up a business. They just go and work their job and like go to work and then do their job, come home, relax, go out to the pub at night or, spend time with their family or whatever they do for fun and they switch off. But like having a business, it's like full on a lot of the time. You can't switch off when you've got a business because it's all the time. And, you might get a message outside of hours, even if you're really boundaried, you sometimes do need to respond. And even if you don't have that, you also have like you're just constantly thinking, how can I make this better? Like you
yeah.
were, yeah,
Yeah, being a business is like 24 hours. And then, so I work with a lot of businesses to try to get them out of that, especially if they're the owner. Because the last thing you want to be is the worst boss you ever knew
Yeah.
about, where you never take a vacation, you never get a break, you're just like constant because you'll get burnt out, right? You have to have that time to stick your feet in the dirt and to think of your next big thing. Because in business, if it's grow or die, if you're not growing and going stagnant, that business is dying. That's just the way it is. You have to consistently be pushing forward, pushing to innovate, looking at your system, seeing where you can improve, and that takes a big toll on
Yeah.
on an owner, and it takes a big toll on the staff if you don't have a really good leader who can set clear goals and say, okay, I've noticed that our system is now 8 years old, which is ancient. It's like we're having an abacus. We're going to be looking at a new system. This is going to mean some change, but I'm hoping that with the newer systems that can bring in AI and other things in here, it can free us up a little bit more, because I can see we're getting bottlenecks. So I'm just thinking of one client that I worked with, and we worked, on that sort of timeline. This is when we're going to look. We're going to get it here. We're thinking, the company's telling us it takes this long to get it installed, and then we can be off to the races. But even then, we're going to have issues that come up, right? And as long as you are clear and not unrealistic about goals, you can have a really good changeover. And then all of a sudden, your people are like, wow, that would have, why do I feel like I'm not busy enough right now? Because we've upgraded. And every time you upgrade, there's something, well, what else can we do? And it
Yeah.
allows you to propel forward and have more bandwidth to do more innovations. But yeah, it's hard when you're an owner. Very hard, because the grow or die mindset takes a lot of energy. So you
Yeah.
need a lot of fuel and food and rest and everything else to propel it.
Well, I'm really lucky in that respect as well. I've got a really good team who does all the work now. So for one of my businesses, so I've kind of started doing other stuff as well, which is
That's
hence why
good.
I've got the podcast, and I do some counseling as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's where you want to be, because you can still drive it, because you're still the captain. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. So it's good. And when you have a really good team that's innovative too, and you don't have to do all the innovative thinking and the pushing forward, because you have people who naturally are pushers. Oh, it's so wonderful.
Yeah. And when I tell people all the things I'm involved in, they're like, oh my God, that's so much. But I mean, it's not like I'm doing, it's not like full-time jobs. It's like, do a bit of this and then I do a bit of that. And then, you know what I mean? And I like that variety. I've always liked to have my fingers in lots of pies. And it
Do you
sounds like
feel
you're like
like,
that as well.
yeah, well, I don't know if I only have my little 3 things. I keep it, I'm not like, I bet you're probably involved in a lot more things than me. You seem like you're more out there a little bit, which is good. Do you feel like that you had said that being homeless for you, um, you pushed harder. What other things do you think you took from that experience
Well,
besides just
yeah.
leveling?
So because I didn't have very much money for quite a few years, I learnt how to solve problems without any resources. So it made me think differently and think like what are all of the possibilities, and like I still do this now. I'll come out with some ridiculous ideas which are never going to work, but you've got to like rule them out. Do you know what I mean? Get them out
Mhm.
there, look at them, turn them round, and consider whether they're going to work or not, even though they're more like they might be ridiculous. You've got to do that and not rule anything out, because I've realized that when you do rule things out before you've explored it, sometimes that's the answer. So
I love that. Actually, I'm going to use that. I love that. I'm going to steal that tactic, because I think it's brilliant.
huh? And
Yeah.
like well, we used to call it brainstorming, but then they said
Well, yeah.
it was a like it was discriminatory against epileptics.
What? Really?
Yeah, there's a PC brigade. Anyway, then they started calling it a thought shower, but I still like brainstorming. I'm old school.
I had
So
never heard of anything other than brainstorming.
Yeah, you just like get a flip chart or whatever, and you just
Yeah.
write everything you can possibly think of. That's one way of doing it anyway. Or you just consider something, and then until you have an idea about something else, and then you consider that. And sometimes by the time you've thought about all the options, the situation's actually resolved itself because things move on, don't they? And then it's not as big a problem as you think it is, or something else is a priority, and you're like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, there's that way of trying to think about solving a problem. But I think one of the issues with being in business and trying to solve problems is you don't always see the problems as they're developing. So it's spotting them early, because that's the best time to fix them, is when they're small. So, and then you learn as well as you go on. So, I mean, I've had a business for 10 years now, and yeah, the learning curve was steep and
It is
expensive.
stiff. I mean, I deal with a lot of doctors now, so I take a lot of clinics through turnovers and things like that, or just service-based business owners. And I can tell you that all service-based owners were experts at what they did before they decided to start the
Yeah.
business. They were the great coaches or florists or painters or doctors, and then they decide to do a clinic or a floral shop or whatever. But going into business is its own lion that's so different. And what's weird is it's different for everyone, because in most cases you're competing against yourself month after month and your own numbers rather than doing what somebody else is doing. It's just, how can I do this better? And it's that tiny differentiator, that makes the difference. I worked with a floral shop who was like that, and one of their differentiators was just how they wrapped their flowers. They used a different type of wrapping to wrap the flowers and how they did it, and it just looked more bespoke. It was still maybe $1 more than anyone else's, but it was, how can we continue to do things that are just a little bit different to where it's a little bit more branded and we feel nicer about the outcome of what we're handing people. And they exploded just doing that, just thinking of the little differences rather than going and buying the same plastic that you shove it in and then putting like that same little wrap around it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it is just weird. It's just like you're competing against your own thought of
Because
it,
I think sometimes business owners can have like a race to the bottom. How cheap can we make it? I'm not getting customers, so let's reduce the price and let's do it cheap. But actually, people like to have quality services and
Yeah, a race to the
products.
bottom is the worst thing. Once you become a commodity, like a computer or a chip or, earbuds or something like that, it is a race to the bottom. And yet people they're just as good as the Apple but iPod buds. I know I got those as a gift. And then I ended up getting another type that was like $29 off of, TikTok. And I got them like, these are just as good, if not better. But who is still selling millions of dollars?
Yeah.
The iPod Apple earbuds. Why? People want that because of who they are and how they are and how they've developed that over time.
It's that
They'll pay
brand, isn't
literally.
it?
It's just because of the brand, really. It's not that the
Hmm.
other little cheap ones, but the way they've packaged that and they have it speak with its other products. Even though you can do it with one more thing, I think the effect, they're right here. I think these are cute, right? And they don't fall out of my ear, and they're just adorable, right? You can just take them, but people will still get those other ones. For the people who are listening, I showed a little ball that has the snap-on ones that I got off my TikTok shop. Yeah.
Yeah, TikTok's pretty interesting, isn't it? It's an interesting place.
It is an interesting place because as an entrepreneur and as a business consultant and coach who helps businesses grow, it's really inspiring to me that during COVID, that one app allowed, like, just in like the US, it's not only do we have like 100 million listeners or something in the US, but something like 8 million small businesses started on that app and managed to make an economy of itself on the app. So even though they want to turn the app down and they're saying all this stuff about the app and the Chinese are stealing our data and all that, there are so many businesses on it, they can't now. They have to do a deal. They have to change that because people are creative. And they said, well, we can't go out and do this and we can't go work. Well, you know what? We can still reach a lot of people on this. Let's just learn how to set this camera up. And I make wigs, and I'm going to show people these crazy wigs I make. And I'm going to talk about how fun they are. And people just bought them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I find that so inspiring because the creativity of the people who create on there. I mean, there's women who decide to go into lip gloss, and she went into lip gloss on TikTok making all natural ingredients, and she made herself, now she's got a company of dozens and dozens of people sending that lip gloss around the world that she just did in her kitchen to start out with.
It's really amazing the power of the internet, I have to say, because before I've been like promoting counselling locally, but now I'm getting inquiries from all over the world, like Canada and Turkey, and like it's quite interesting.
Yeah, no, that it is, because people want human connections,
Yeah.
and the technology can allow us to make that. In fact, we still need to get out of our house. I'm still a big believer in going out and touching grass and being in the sunlight and, all the other things that they try to tell us are bad, which are great, actually great for us. But the fact that we can have this, is very powerful. And it's so powerful, it's scaring, I think, a lot of governments, because it's very borderless. We can reach out. We can hear news before they would ever tell us the news. We can see and hear people's very differing viewpoints on major events. We don't have to live in whatever bubble has been designed for us. We can be conscious on a much better level, which I am a big advocate.
Yeah, it's that citizen journalism. I'm really interested in that because
yes,
I think the information that we've been getting for a long time has been quite controlled. And now that we're starting to see and hear different voices, you have to look for it though as well because of the algorithm. But you can access different voices and people who are actually there with a smartphone and they're videoing it, and it's really interesting how that power's shifting because of that.
Yeah, it's not just you're going to believe what we tell you and what we've created. But the bad thing is when you get AI now in the picture, which I find AI is fascinating, but it's also terrifying what they're able to create that people believe. Especially when you put the video aspect of AI. Now, it's still not where it needs to be, but I just saw a thing on, again, it was on Instagram or TikTok, but it was Ozzy Osbourne. He just did his final one. I mean, I had tears in my eyes and I'm like, I'm coming up, right? Like that. I was invested in his last one. I don't agree with everything he's done. I mean, he peed on the Alamo, so I'm still mad about it as a Texan on that one. But that was when he was like in the 70s and he was real high or something like that. But still, I could, here's this human who had this whole career and all the people there for him. It was very moving. But then someone created him. It was a very realistic, speaking in his normal voice about saying goodbye and this. And I thought, well, those were really powerful words. And then I see a comment, this is AI.
So
he's not
him
speaking like this anymore. He's got this tremor, blah, blah, blah. This was completely created in AI. And I was like, I would have thought he said that because it wasn't anything bad. It was really heartwarming and heartfelt and nice, but yet it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, that's scary because you could make anyone do anything.
Yeah.
Bad, good, or indifferent. You could destroy careers if enough people believed the wrong video. I mean, some people, could you send them to jail? Or get them in trouble or have violence committed against them because you put a video of them doing something heinous that they never did, So that scares me that we need to rein that in.
I think we do need to check what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there has to be.
I've become very skeptical.
Yeah, very skeptical because people are, they're just testing it out. But like, I don't know, another one of like fake animals. Oh, isn't this a cute something tiger? Well, it doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
And you're like, come on, that's not real. But then some of them look very real. And you're like, that's amazing how there's going to be people who believe that there really is this unicorn tiger bird that they just discovered,
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? How things are changing as well and how we need to get used to the new technology and sort of develop our way of being around that so that we don't we get to grips with the effects of it.
the effects of it and become more savvy about it. And all it does is it's ask questions, press X to doubt. And I think that that goes against, there are very many controlling factors, governments and things like that want us just to believe whatever they say.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to develop, you have to prove it and prove it again. You have to be so secure in what you're telling me is the absolute truth that I can question, and never get in trouble for questioning, because there's so many other things out there that need to be questioned.
Well, this is the thing though, and people are getting into trouble for asking questions. It's quite terrifying.
Well, it's oppressive. That's fascist. That's you should be able to question anything. That is,
Absolutely.
you should be able to think as freely as you want to think without being, and thinking freely doesn't mean, it's very bizarre to me that, you're right. There is free speech, but that you shouldn't be, there is not freedom from consequences. But yes, you should be free from consequences if your speech is not obscene, vulgar, and directed at children, terroristic, or violent. Those things should be absolutely not free to do. You shouldn't threaten violence and terrorize people. You shouldn't, unconsensually speak in such graphic and vulgar manners that it's obscene to people. They shouldn't be subjected to that unless they consent, and never around children. But for those things, there seems to be a pass for that.
Yeah.
You seem to be able to do that in front of kids or whatever. You can say that, but it's other higher thought things that they're suddenly saying, well, you should not be able to say that. What? I should question science all day long. I should be able to question politicians all day long. I'm not being obscene. I'm not being terroristic, and I'm not unconsensually pushing something of a graphic, obscene nature onto children or unconsenting adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that should be the only consequences, is if you violate those sorts of laws against violence or, unconsenting things that would commit harm against people. So I think we just have to say, no, we're not going to allow that. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah.
But it's quite worrying what our Labour government are trying to do.
That's all over the news here. I can't believe it. And I'm scared. And, in other states, people are like, America's America, but I'm going to tell you, other states are very different here.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I think when people travel here that they don't realize is how big it is.
Yeah.
Geographically big, but also how different it is, from the accents to how people think to their own culture, how they want to run their states. Very different. So, but here I would say in Texas that, what's happening in the UK is very much in our news here, because we're like, that can't happen. That can't happen. We want to say what we're going to say. Like, what? Somebody's going to jail over a Facebook post? That's insane to me.
I know.
Like, that
really
is
worrying.
that is the ultimate slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought we were against slavery. You cannot enslave people to the point that they can't even speak without your hand around their neck saying you're not allowed to think that or say that. That, to me, that's a slavery. That's an enslavement that we have to never allow, because that is so detrimental to the human spirit. That is just killing. It is killing of a spirit to say you cannot think, you cannot speak,
I totally agree with you. It is quite chilling, but I think people are starting to realise what's happening. And
I see it.
Yeah. So with those like YouTube channels and what have you, we've got a lot of different voices, and mainstream media's dying out because they're just telling lies all the time.
Yeah, nobody wants to listen to that. They want to hear what's really going on. They want to make a real connection. They want to know the truth about things. And they also don't want to see something in front of their face and then be told that, oh, don't believe what you see, believe what we told you. Here in the States, we had that really bad against our media. They literally were in front of people setting things on fire, saying, well, these protests are mostly peaceful. And literally behind them are people beating people and dragging small business owners and punching Starbucks managers in the face while setting them on fire. And you've got this person shaking, going, yeah, these are mostly peaceful, because that's what the thing in their ear was telling them they had to say.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, it was insane. It wasn't just, and everybody's like, That's not mostly like, what are you even talking about? No, your credibility's out the window. You're lying to us. You're liars. And now they're like, why won't you believe us? Well,
I wonder.
they're yeah. It's pretty, you ruined that. You ruined
Yeah,
it for everybody by being sold out by your advertisers.
yeah,
When 70% of all news stations are owned by Pfizer and Moderna, you can't really believe everything that they said.
no,
And when they won't report anything that's not pro their advertisers, well,
yeah.
that's a problem.
It's definitely a problem. I think we are seeing a lack of trust in all the institutions and organisations as well. So I don't know how they're going to tackle that, because people don't trust the police or the hospitals, the NHS, the government, the schools. It's the universities. Like, the trust is going out of everything.
They have to
We've
just
had
stop
a high
funding them.
trust society, but not now.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry,
they have
what
to
did you just
stop.
say there?
Well, I was saying they have to stop funding them.
Yeah, well, it's
Stop
government,
funding them,
it's
make it their
taxpayers'
own.
money.
Yeah, it's theft. It's theft when you steal the taxpayers' money for things the taxpayers have not voted on or want at all. When you don't secure the borders, when you don't promote safety for the citizens, the lawful and legal citizens of the country, when you're
Mhm.
not protecting legal immigrants who are coming there
Yeah,
and not protecting them, not putting the things in place for them. I mean, we have the exact same thing here, and now it's starting to change. And all of a sudden, it's, gone down, and you realize how many systems needed to get, like, no, they said all these people left like a chicken processing plant that was owned by China, which we didn't even realize, that provided this ridiculous percentage of chicken to America, right? And we're like, why is a major hub like that not even American owned?
yeah,
Number one. So now we have these laws where they can't even own the land now. So in Texas, we just signed a bunch of laws where China and other countries are not even allowed to own, these large things of land. They're being forced to give them back because that's messing with our ability to control, our food and our produce and stuff like that. But why was that ever allowed? Like, we have to really raise our voices, and it's so overwhelming, right? So you're like, oh, so we have to worry about, the borders, and then this, and then the plants, and who's giving our farmland away, and this, and it just gets so overwhelming. But you don't have to do all of it. You can just pick one thing that you love and champion that and reach out for that, and you'll be the person for that. So just pick the one thing that's really bugging you, and that'll be your thing. Because somebody else will want something else, and just
yeah.
tell people to do that, because you can't do it all, right?
No.
It just becomes overwhelming, and you're just like, well, I got to go to work now and keep my lights on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just noticing what's happening and then, like, speaking out as well. Keep on speaking even when they don't want you to. It's so important now. It's really worrying to think that the democracy that we've grown up with is under threat. But I think what's happening in America is it's being put right a little bit.
Mhm.
But some people aren't seeing it. And
No,
they
there's a
don't
lot of
like
people.
Trump, but he's done some good stuff.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I mean, we are very fractured on it, and it's all because of the media. We don't hate our media enough here
Yeah.
for how they fractured people, and it's literally by design.
Yeah.
There
Same
are
things
people who
happening here.
make a lot of money off of this division, and they don't want fraud and waste to be investigated. They don't want, to have a strong citizenship. They don't want people to have food that isn't laden with cancer-causing chemicals, right? And you're like, how would people get that evil? And we're like, for money and power, for
Hmm.
their family and their people. I mean, we're in a weird part of human history where, for the first time in the wall of human history, you can see who the people in poverty are, because they're the ones that are actually obese, but they're nutritionally starving. So they're starving. They're not getting any nutrients, but they are obese. So the working class is obese, and the only people that are healthy and thin are the rich. That is exactly opposite of how it's been since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And it's because the food supplies have changed to where they're not even really food. So we have a lot of issues like that we can champion to get to change. And we are working on it in different ways, but you have to be willing to speak. So going back to what we're talking about, the lack of free speech, if they stop us from even questioning or talking, then it's just genocide at that point, because you can't even stop it. It's awful. So I mean,
And
that's like the only thing you
the
go.
obesity thing, that what they're doing here is promoting a weight loss jab. The weight loss jabs are like advertised everywhere. It never used to be like that. Like medication was not advertised, but it is now. It's all
See,
over.
we're working to try to stop them from being advertising it here. I don't believe any medication should be advertised.
No.
No, there shouldn't be for-profit medication. That should they should get that medication. They should do that, and the doctor should decide through after trials if it's effective. If they're seeing it with their patients, then they'll talk to their patients about it.
Definitely.
Not circumventing all the people that are supposed to protect us from bad things and saying, we're going to circumvent you. And we're going to have the patient say, by the way, this is what we want. This is what we want. We're not going to even come to you because this advertisement has literally mind controlled me, because it's been on 24 hours a day. And all these influencers have been paid saying that this is why they're so beautiful, not the 15 filters they're using.
Yeah,
Right. And the
absolutely.
makeup team and the hair team and the budget for their outfits, they're telling me it's because they took this medicine. Oh, and I know they get paid a little bit from the medical company, a little bit, right?
Mm,
They're getting
yeah.
fortunes thrown at these young girls to say this and flown all over the world.
There's a
Yeah.
lot that's going wrong, isn't it?
It's a lot, but if we don't talk about it, then we can't put it into young people's minds and people's minds. And when they see these influencers talk about it, go, wait a minute, they were probably paid for that. There's a whole team behind that because they're selling me a product. So that's why I said we've got to doubt more. We have to,
Yeah, we do.
not that I don't want people to be negative. I'm a very positive person, right?
Hmm.
Any challenge, anything that other people call a problem, I call it a challenge.
Yeah,
Right? Challenge, there's a solution to it. Let's get to the other end, but I still will question everything.
definitely. You need to. It's that why. Why is that happening? And
That's
asking
right.
that. Yeah, definitely. So, Jennifer, we've been talking for about an hour, so it's fine. It's good. I'm just wondering if there's somewhere that you'd like people to look for you. If the people like what they've heard, where should they go to find?
Well, we just had a real conversation. I don't know. They're like, I do more than just talk about conspiracy theories.
That's my favourite subject. I think I should put it on my profile on Podmatch where we met, so that,
I know.
yeah,
Me
stand
too.
out.
Stand out, right? So you can find me, Jennifer Gligoric, at superclinicproject.com. If you click on my picture, then it'll take you to where you can get into our free school account where I have a lot of training. It's all business owner training. So I do one-on-one coaching. I also have an accelerator program with a company called Brand Lab. We can take you, if you own a clinic, within 4 months, we'll 2 to 10 extra business. It's very hard. You're working 1.5 to 2 hours a night on top of everything else you've got to do in your business, but we have incredible results, hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. So you can see that. But if you just want a free session with me, or you're like, hey, I feel stuck in my business, I love doing that. I love doing the brainstorming, which I had no idea. I'm supposed to call it something else. And I'm just going to forget that because I'm going to still call it
That's
that.
okay. That was a 20-year-old thing that we weren't supposed to do. So I think
okay.
it's okay. It's probably okay again.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that I missed that memo on that. But yeah, just go to superclinicproject.com, see my picture, Jennifer Gligoric, click on me, and you can get a free session.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Yes, it's been lovely to talk to you as well.